Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, and it looks like we already have Holy Ninja around. Hey, man, how's it going?
Hey, good to see you. Yeah, welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder, where we go into the our distorted take on the news that was for the week.
Yes, and we don't worry, we will not be discussing the Titanic or anything else that may be big in the news right now. We prefer to be a little more what's the word
We're, we
countercultural, I
yeah,
guess.
we also like to make fun of. Uh, uh, Sorry, just been a bit of a long week, but we prefer to look at more frivolous things.
Yeah.
So, so we'll be talking extensively about the recent box office failures.
Yes, yes, and hey Ninja, sorry to hear about this.
Well, now, are these the historical Total War fans who don't really care about historical accuracy, or are they the ones who? Well, I know there's a certain subset of Paradox Games people who wonders, well, it's a World War II game. Where are the camps? Why can't I?
Yeah. Uh, well, since I don't know anything about Total War, I can't.
Yeah, it's actually a good series, but like anything real life and historical, it attracts jerks.
Oh,
Uh, Speaking of things that attract jerks, we we have our things of the week, which is our
right. Yeah.
analysis of media we consumed. Now,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
I made the financial and dietic poor choice to have a pizza ordered, which is bound to show up at the door at any moment. And I made the poor choice not to ask for a contactless delivery. So I'm so this week we actually have kind of a sandwich of things of the week. So I'm going
Right.
to go first, but expect an interruption at any moment.
Yes. And Ninja says it's the ones who are mauling over Total War Pharaoh. It would take a video link to explain the situation. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear about Total War Pharaoh. Um, Now, is it now on the historical inaccuracy perspective? Measure it against Netflix's African Queens series.
Yeah.
10 being we used time travel to actually interview pharaohs. One being, one being, I don't care what they told you in the schools. Cleopatra was black.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, but yeah. So on to our things of the week here. Um,
So, funny thing, I ended up seeing The Flash on Sunday. It was a Father's Day gift to my dad. Basically, took him to the movies, and well, there were two other movies I might have rather seen that were out, but it was his choice, and I'm honestly glad I could actually speak on it.
uh,
Now, but now I bring that up because I was thinking to myself, well, why didn't I really have a thing of the week? It's like there was a day missing from my mental schema of the week. And then I remembered that last Friday I attended the Twice concert down in at the Tacoma Dome.
ah,
So, so yeah, so I
yes.
wasn't switching topics. That was
Yeah.
I was giving a preamble.
Right. Yeah. And I jumped the gun a little.
Yep. So, uh, so Twice is a K-pop group that is surprisingly long-lived as such things are measured.
Mm,
So a little bit of backstory. I'm not into K-pop. I would say that I'm at the most kind of casual about some of the groups, and the extent of my interest in K-pop is typically listening to the songs on Spotify as background music.
yeah. I'm kind of the same way.
Like, meanwhile, where in 2020, to alleviate boredom, I fell into the whole VTuber rabbit hole. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, fell into the K-pop rabbit hole, and he's big into this. It's one of his major hobbies. He's taken flights to Arizona and New Jersey specifically to attend concerts before.
Oh wow.
And for context, we live in Washington State, so these some of these are rather extensive trips.
Yeah, yeah, especially in New Jersey. Ooh.
Yep. So uh, he a cool thing he did a couple years back was he made me a Spotify playlist and adjusted it based on what I told him I liked. And by coincidence, twice the one of the ones I said I really liked was the one who showed up. So we decided to make a go of it. And it's funny. It's like the two of us almost felt like it was a gift to the third friend who was really into it. Like, it'll probably be a good enough time, but it's more for him. I think we all
Yeah.
had a really good time.
Oh, good.
So, a lot of K-pop groups, based on what I've heard from him, start life as they'll basically have like a reality TV show,
Mm.
and yep, there's the steps. All right, pizza time. One sec.
Uh, all right.
Prelude for pizza time. Prelude for Daniel's thing.
Yes. And Ninja is saying it's not about accuracy, more over gameplay. Okay. And yeah, and the Netflix African Queen series is hilariously bad. Yeah. That's what I've heard. Um, but but yeah, as far as I am with K-pop, like I know of some groups, and I've kind of watched some of them, but I'm not a serious stan, or if you want to call it that. I'm kind of like I know of like a couple of groups, so yeah, I know K-pop stands tend to be a little oddballs. But now oh, I think you got muted.
Yep, so I did.
Okay. Ninja says I only know Gangnam Style. Yeah, I know that one too.
For the longest time, I thought that was Japanese and it was Gundam style, and it
Ah,
was way nerdier of a thing than it actually was.
yeah.
So anyhow, from what my friend tells me, a lot of K-pop groups are formed because the label will set up a reality show and
Okay.
they will basically run people through and see who, yeah, and come up. The winners get to be the group,
Ah, okay.
which might explain part of why a lot of K-pop groups don't necessarily last quite as long as Twice has. I believe they're 7 years old at this point,
Oh wow.
which that's impressive for any sort of group act.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
now that I think
Yeah.
about it, I wonder if that instability is why American music has drifted away from having actual bands into more being about individual personalities like The Weeknd or Lady Gaga or whatever.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you don't see as many like you don't see like any singing groups or
Yeah.
rock bands or anything like that. Yeah.
But
Um,
the show that
yeah.
these girls came out of was called Twice. Apparently, seven of them won initially, and then they took two of the losers and decided that they were Twice material.
Okay. Hmm.
Um, they are a group who is predominantly Korean, like you'd expect, but two members are Japanese and one is Taiwanese.
Okay.
So you actually have a decent amount of crossover there. Interestingly enough, one of the Japanese, I looked this up because he wanted me to know what my bias was. A bias is who is your favorite in a group? And I looked
uh,
up their things. One of the Japanese members who I could not pick up out of this lineup was actually born in Texas.
hmm.
So it's a very it's a very international business.
Oh yeah. Wow. Hmm.
Um, so their overall style of music I would describe as very poppy. Like it's interesting where you don't necessarily it's not as special as just to listen to it. Like if you just listen to it, you don't necessarily see what the big deal is. It just sounds like, you know, bubblegum music.
Yeah.
Um, the but seeing the actual show is an experience because there's a bunch of factors. First off, they're all good dancers. Interestingly, two members were out because of COVID. Um,
Oh.
so you could kind of tell, which is good because last year we were going to see a J rock group called Scandal, and the whole thing was canceled because everybody had COVID. So I guess that's part of the advantage of having nine members is you can afford to lose a couple.
Yeah.
Uh, so then uh, now for some of the dance formations, they it was seamless. For others, you could say, okay, so there's 5 of you information over here, and there's 2 of you information over here. Now I see where the other 2 went.
Yeah.
uh, but they had some really elaborate choreography. My somebody did slip at one point, but I think it's because in one of the things, some of the backup dancers were having like a money fight, quote unquote. Like they
uh,
were throwing big wads of what was supposed to be cash at each other. And you could see that they had the lights down, but from our angle, you could see the guys with the leaf blowers trying to blow these loose pieces of paper off the stage. And some of them were sticking to it. I bet it's one of those like stages where it's like a coarse shark skin like material, right?
yeah.
So they were
Yeah.
stuck to it. I have to wonder if one of the girls who slipped, like the second to last thing, like stepped on one of those pieces of paper.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
But that was the only thing I saw in the show. And it was interesting because they did a bunch of routines together. Then they switched over to solo songs to give everybody a chance to change costumes and
Mm.
to recover. The other part of the show was the audience. So, having been recently to an anime convention, and this is going to shock everyone, the average K-pop enjoyer is it skews more female than male, and they are in better shape than the average anime fan. Also, interestingly, now Washington State has a large Asian population, but it was like a very heavily Asian audience, which is interesting because I thought that it would be like more distributed through the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that that was interesting. It also meant that there were a lot of people there who were, taking their selfies to show off that they were at the concert, to post on Instagram, and I kept thinking, there's a lot of people in this audience that they wanted to, they could probably grab 2 of them if they knew the dance moves. They could blend in. So the other thing I thought was interesting, or the coolest aspect of the show, though, was they sold these $65 light sticks, and K-pop light sticks are apparently famous. Although
uh,
a half hours of research did not reveal exactly how they do this, which was irritating because everybody just wanted to talk about here's the history of K-pop light sticks. Here's what the different K-pop light sticks look like. Every group has their own light stick. Yada yada yada. Just
yeah.
just tell me if it's Bluetooth or what,
Yeah.
because the people who were out of sync, their light sticks were just a solid color the whole time. Everybody else, it was just constantly flashing in perfect synchronicity.
Oh, wow.
So that really added to the visual affair of the or visual. So to uh, But yeah, they basically just flashed in and out of sync. Got distracted by Holy Ninja's contacts. So to
Yeah.
attract an Asian girl, I have to get fit and listen to K-pop. Couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Play the odds.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
But
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 yeah.
so and the Tacoma Dome, pretty decently sized sports arena. Like I would
Mm.
say, it's where some of the minor league teams in the area play.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
so it'd be like a double decker high school stadium for a large high school, I guess is how I'd put it.
Okay.
And it was basically full.
Oh, wow.
Like these tickets, we're lucky the one friend of ours has a job where he doesn't have to pay attention all the time because he was able to camp out months ago and just keep refreshing the website and got us the tickets.
Oh, yeah.
But overall, good time. Glad I went. It was a nice experience to share with the friends, and even if I had been by my complete lonesome, I think I would have enjoyed myself.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, yeah, I think K-pop kind of tends to get a bad rap sometimes, and I think a lot of that may be because some of their fans are really weird. Not all of
Yeah,
them, but some of them are
the
weird.
K-pop stands are to be avoided.
Yeah, yeah,
Or I should say, avoid them online, especially if you have anything remotely negative to say about their group.
yeah. um, but yeah, well, that's yeah.
So I got some nice insight on a culture or a subculture I don't often directly interact with. So
Yeah.
a unique experience.
Yes.
Speaking of unique experiences, a edgy Ninja Turtles comic.
Yeah. So yeah, here's my thing of the week. Yeah, the Last Ronin, which I got my copy right here. It's the hardcover, and I didn't know it was the hardcover until I got it, and it showed up. I went, "Oh, that's why it's $30." uh, but
You're helping IDW keep the lights on for another month.
yeah, 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 very true. um, but yeah, so the Last Ronin is kind of a culmination, if you will, of 35, 40 years of Ninja Turtles comic books, and the big hook with it, of course, is that they brought in Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird to work on it. Now, from what I could see in the credits of it, Eastman did some of the pencils and he did the layouts, and he and Laird co-wrote the story. It sounds like they've been working on it for a while. Um, but anyway, to get into the actual story, it takes place like sometime in the future. They don't really say when, just kind of future world. And New York City has been taken over by Oroku Hiroto, who is the grandson of Shredder and the son of Karai.
So that's pretty far off then.
Yeah, yeah. And so the last Ronin is basically the last surviving Ninja Turtle. And I guess I should I spoil it and tell everybody who it is?
Um, you know what? This comic has been out a year and a half. If you don't want a spoiler, you have five, four, three, two, one.
It's Michelangelo. Um, and we were talking before the show, and of all the turtles for uh, to be the last Ronin, the two turtles that DB was saying makes like for a more would make for a more interesting story would be either Michelangelo or Donatello.
Right. Because, Raphael, you put him in Mad Max, he's going to be so happy that he can just cut loose now.
Yeah,
Leonardo, he would mostly just be moping about how he failed his brothers.
yeah,
Uh, Meanwhile, but they're like the two good fighters, so they're the ones you'd expect to make it out.
hmm
Michelangelo was like always my top prediction, just because like he's the worst fighter and the kid of the group, so having him have to step up makes a lot of sense as like for character progression and just irony.
yeah, yeah. And so the story starts off with Michelangelo sneaking into New York City, which has kind of been it's like if you've ever seen Escape from New York, it's basically did the same thing there where they walled off the whole island. And he goes in to because he's looking to he's getting get revenge on Oroku Hiroto for the deaths for the deaths of the other three turtles and Splinter and Casey Jones. And of course he it doesn't work out, and then he meets up with the people who are in New York who are part of the resistance. And two of the big resistance people are April O'Neil and April and Casey Jones's daughter, who's also her name is also Casey Casey Marie. And so the basically the whole story is Michelangelo trying to stop Oroku Hiroto, and then also you also get the flashbacks with what happened to the other turtles, what happened to Splinter, and what happened to Casey Jones, and of course what happens with Karai. Um, Shredder, by the way, is long gone. Um, but yeah, and then
As you would
of course,
probably expect if his grandson is old enough to be a warlord.
well, yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, and so he you get the flashbacks, and then you also get of course a lot of other characters that are famous from the turtles show up, like Baxter Stockman's in there, although he's not a fly. Um, and Professor Honeycutt, also known as the Fugitoid, uh, makes an appearance. Um, Little known fact about the Fugitoid was that they actually Eastman and Laird actually created him before they created the turtles, and
Huh.
yeah, yeah, they were trying to get him to be their comic book, but comic book character, main comic book character, but none of the other companies really wanted him, and so they ended up, of course, if you know the story of the turtles, of how they were created, they just kind of were silly one night and just drew them up.
Right. Like they're just, it's like a big parody of the Frank Miller Daredevil comics at the time.
Right, yeah, and they even worked Daredevil into their origins. Like the mutagen that mutates them into mutant turtles was the same mutagen that gives that blinds Daredevil and gives him his powers.
That I didn't know. Now you wonder, what if, like, what could have been, what if Marvel had ended up buying out Ninja Turtles at some point, or Disney had? You know that they would have already reestablished that link at some point.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Well, I guess it's a good thing that they those two guys held out as long as they did. Um, and
True
Ninja,
dat.
yeah, and Ninja says never underestimate Shredder. IDW Shredder was a daimyo in Sengoku. Is that right? Sengoku, Japan.
Sengoku?
Sengoku. Yeah, who was revived using ninja magic before the comic started. I have to confess, I really haven't read any of the IDW Turtles comic books. I'm very much an old school Mirage guy. So.
From what I've heard about the IDW ones, the first 100 issues are good, but very slow in development.
Mm,
So it's like it's very decompressed. But
okay.
but like people still really enjoyed it. Then after issue 100, they handed it over to what you would classically call an SJW comics book team, and it turned into trans allegories and rock concerts.
Oh, jeez. Well, yeah, that's the way it goes, I guess. At least in comic books. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, this book is really good. I enjoyed the story very much. It's got a lot of action in it, and it has that dystopian kind of cyberpunk esque feel to it, which I always love. If you haven't, read.
what name two comics that you've come out with that possibly match that.
Yeah. um, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot, and obviously gets into Michelangelo's motivations, and it's definitely a different side of Michelangelo that you're not used to seeing, because he's they even Casey Marie, April's daughter, and she said, "Oh, you're the funny one." So, well, he's not funny in this. He's very serious.
How's the art in it? I heard that it was the original Eastman Laird art to start with, but like they filled it in with other people.
Yeah, yeah. The artwork's really good. I mean, here, let me open up a. Yeah, see, you can see it.
Yeah, that's what you'd be afraid of, is them like hiring some cheap villain.
Yeah, yeah, but no, it's really, yeah. The artwork's great. And I think, I can't remember where it is, but Eastman and Laird actually have a cameo in here.
This comic probably saved IDW last year because, as you can see, the issues were like $8.99 a pop, and they were selling like 100,000 an issue.
Yeah, yeah. Kept the lights open, or yeah, kept the lights on for a little while. Yeah, here's I don't know if you can see it very well, but there they are, eat on a train eating a pizza.
I never noticed before, but is that Karai there?
Yes, she does. Yeah, in the flashback pages she's in, she does look a lot like Elektra.
So you were thinking ahead of me. That's like, wait a second. That's I got that reference.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you see the book anywhere, if it's on, if you see it on Amazon, maybe get it in paperback. You know, give it a read. You know.
Yep. Now, in honor of the Ninja Turtles, I'm going to finish off my last piece of pizza, then get into the real click getter for the week.
Yes. Yeah, and I can honestly say I probably won't be seeing I definitely won't be seeing this movie in the theater. I'll be waiting for HBO Max on it.
All right. So let's pull the band aid off. The
Yes.
Flash review. Now, eagle eyed viewers might go, DBU, sexy hypocrite. Many months ago, you said your wallet was closed to this movie because Ezra Miller was in it. How could you possibly go see it? Well, my dad is a big time geek. I would say that he is a bigger fan of the DC than the Marvel universe. And for
Mm.
Father's Day, I said, "Hey, let me take you to the movies." He's like, "Okay, well, is Flash out?" He just said automatically, like, "Yeah, I came out this weekend. Great, let's go." So I bought him. So I ended up buying 2 tickets to this because it was part of the gift was to treat him.
Mm. All right.
Um, now we're going to talk about this in a minute. This movie was a huge bomb,
Yeah.
like very huge bomb. But interestingly enough, on Sunday in the one theater we tried to go to, or I tried to get tickets for first, it was like there were no two adjoining seats available at noon on a Sunday.
Hmm.
Like very few solo seats. Meanwhile, the other theater, which was 5 miles the other way, was just like completely open for a showing 10 minutes earlier. So I can't account for that. I don't.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if there was a group who decided to go.
Yeah. Probably.
Changa says the Flash was a movie. Uh, that's debatable. All right, so let's kind of look at this from a few angles. First
Okay.
off, the overall summary of the movie is very similar to what we've been commenting on being leaked over the last year and a half or so.
Mm.
There really weren't a lot of outright surprises. We knew that Michael Keaton was going to be Batman in it. We knew that uh, there were two Ezra Millers, three technically.
Mm.
We knew that it was like a rough retelling of Flashpoint of some sort,
Mm.
and that we knew that at one point they were considering recasting Ezra, but decided against it. So, as far as things that really surprised me, not very many.
Yeah.
So let's. I think that since this is going to function as our overall review on it, let's go ahead and do the non-spoiler section, then the spoiler section.
Okay.
Non-spoiler wise, this is a very rough-looking movie.
Mm.
Everybody online has been posting their clips from the movie of, oh, there's there he is putting a baby in a microwave, and the baby looks like one of the babies from Ally McBeal
Oh.
many decades ago.
Yeah.
Um, so the special effects do this movie no favors.
Mm.
That being said, and this is weird. So you know how when you watch an old movie, you might start noticing like the strings holding up the bats or whatever, but then after a certain amount of time, your brain just starts deleting those because it's not, it's like not useful information anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
About the half hour mark, after like when he was doing his time travel, it looked bad, like no
Uh,
texture, bad.
Oof.
Where was the VFX budget? Giving us two Ezra Millers. That's where the VFX budget was.
Oh, jeez.
Uh, so,
Yeah.
but about after like when they did this time travel, they did this thing where there was like a bubble around the Flash, and then whatever moment he was traveling through would be like there were like statues almost representing it, like like no textured models of the scene that are playing out around him.
Oh, jeez.
Now, the director did say that was kind of on purpose, but I don't know that I entirely believe that. What I suspect is that they were told at some point, pencils down, we're not putting another dollar into this turkey.
Yeah.
After a certain point, I became blind to the bad effects, and there were a couple of scenes I thought looked all right until I saw people posting the clips online. I said, "Oh, that's right. I was just Stockholm syndromed into thinking that these effects were acceptable at this point." Um, Now, as far as let's hear what else is a non-spoiler. Surprisingly, so okay, so I think we haven't made it no secret that neither of us cared for Ezra's take on Barry Allen in either of the versions of Justice League.
Correct. Yes.
I would say that it's weird if you have that version of Barry in the actual context of the DCEU as a member of the Justice League. He goes from mildly to wildly insufferable.
Ugh.
But those scenes are only like the first 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of the movie as they set up the situation and the very end.
Okay.
In the middle, he is apparently the way to make Ezra Miller bearable as the Flash is to have a time displaced version of his younger self who is even more infuriating.
Oh boy.
Young Barry or other Barry is well, we've criticized the humor in both Justice League cuts before,
Hmm.
like where they try it's like somebody's bad idea of what a Marvel character is supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's ramped up to 11 for past Barry.
Ugh.
Now I will say that that Ezra actually does a good job in the middle of the movie, more or less playing regular Barry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like as soon as he has somebody more goofy to play off of, he seriouses up and is actually a character.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what makes the movie tolerable.
Okay.
In fact, enjoyable at places.
Hmm.
Because this is not the cinematic abortion that I was necessarily expecting it to be.
Okay.
Uh, Now, as far as non-spoiler thoughts, Michael Keaton, it is nice to see him as Batman again. There's some weirdness there. The movie also doesn't really end necessarily. Or like it ends, but it's like, what was that? It was clearly meant to be a setup for future things, and the fact that we aren't getting future things means that's kind of a pointless movie, unfortunately.
Yeah. Which.
They
Yeah.
they do an all right job giving it some sense of conclusion because
Mm.
it does resolve the issue of. It's based on the more recent Jeff Johns, Ethan Van Sciver take, where Barry is trying to. Barry's father was arrested for killing his mother, and he's trying to prove his innocence.
Okay.
And there is a resolution to that, at least. Now, people have pointed out that the resolution wouldn't work because the evidence would be inadmissible. But hey, you just watch a superhero movie where a guy got sad and ran too fast and realized he could break the time barrier.
Yeah.
What do you expect?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, would I recommend you go out and buy tickets to this? Not really. I think waiting for it to show up on Max or home theaters makes sense. The lack of huge screen might help with the special effects issues,
Uh,
but I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this. Like, I came out of the theater happier than when I saw Batman v Superman or the or even the Dark Knight. Now, the Dark Knight, I had this weird. What I'll occasionally get into this mode where how to put it when bad things are happening on screen and suddenly they go well, you're supposed to feel a sense of relief. Sometimes I will get into this mode where I will instead have this feeling of okay, you just cheated.
yeah.
Like, you just spent the whole movie showing how awful everybody is. You expect me to believe that those prisoners wouldn't blow up the gondola full of good people to save their own skins? Sure, sure, man, sure. You, right, like, and that's like uh, that again. That's a feeling I have, not a critique.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I came out of this movie reasonably happy, because partially because here are expectations for a normal movie, expectations I came into watching The Flash, and I had no hope for this movie.
Yeah.
I'll also say Michael Keaton as Batman did a good job. Um, he he was better than the trailers made it look.
Okay.
And as much as certain elements of YouTube complained ad nauseum about that version of Supergirl played by what's her name, uh,
Oh, yeah.
she she was actually pretty good. Uh,
No,
she,
okay.
like if they recast her as the Supergirl in the James Gunn Supergirl movie, I think you could do a lot worse. Might actually fit the sort of if they really are adapting Tom King's Supergirl comic, the knockoff. What was that Western movie that they ripped off for that one?
Oh,
Like,
which one? The
oh, it was the one where John Wayne is like the old mercenary and the little girl hires him.
True Grit.
True Grit. He basically ripped off True Grit and put Supergirl in it.
Oh, okay.
So I could actually see her fitting that better than the normal blonde-haired, blue-eyed, perky-looking Kara Zor-El.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, go in, be a DC fan, be happy that you're getting to see certain things on the screen that you will never get to see again, after especially after this movie bombed. It just like, okay, well, that was an experience. Now everybody's calling this the end of the Snyderverse. They're forgetting that Aquaman 2 still has to come out, though this is apparently Aquaman 2 chronologically is before this movie, so I
Okay.
guess chronologically speaking, this is the last of them.
Well, you also got Blue Beetle coming out too.
Everybody forgets that one.
Yeah.
I think it's because honestly, Blue Beetle could actually work as part of Guns' universe.
Okay.
So it would not surprise me if the movie does even all right. It wouldn't surprise me if they incorporate that.
Yeah.
All right, now on to the Flash spoilers. If you don't want to get spoiled on the Flash, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the storyline is basically that Barry Allen, he's working with the Justice League. He's leveled up a bit. They borrowed a thing from the '90s comics where he has to eat all the time. Like he has like a super high metabolism, so he actually has like a little watch that tracks his like calorie and blood sugar levels.
Okay.
So he has to like eat constantly. They they have a funny bit at the start with him having to deal with a super slow barista as he's desperately trying to get enough calories to save the day. That was like the one bit of Barry humor that actually really worked, in my opinion.
Okay.
You also It also kind of makes you sad that like what they did to the Snyderverse, because you kind of I found myself actually appreciating the opening set piece because it felt very much like a comic book situation. The babies in the microwave, well, it's because a bunch of babies fell out of a building. Like it was like the building was collapsing and it was like a baby ward or infant ward,
Uh,
and the building tipped over. And as a
Chinggis says, yeah, they kind of
yeah,
dropped the
yeah,
calorie thing
they
after a
did
while.
kind of completely forget about that, didn't they? Uh, so, but yeah, so he has to save these babies at high speed. Now, amusingly, they did make a reference to the classic Flash story, "Nobody Dies," because at one point he does say "Nobody dies." Um, by the way, Mark Wade did not get a thank you for this one. He was actually very upset about that because they had concepts there like the Speed Force and like a few other things he had introduced,
Yeah, and neither did Ethan Van Sciver.
which is
He,
funny. Now, did Jeff Johns get a thank you?
I don't know if he got one or not.
If the okay, Ethan Van Sciver, I kind of understand. He's just an artist, and you see the air quotes.
Yeah.
If they left Jeff Johns out, screw you guys. They completely did this whole premise is based on Flash Rebirth.
Yeah.
Um, so you find out what Barry's deal is, and I had never realized that this version of Barry Allen was supposed to be Hispanic because his mom. Uh, if I found out that his mom had been a telenovela actress at some point in her career, it would not surprise me. Um, but the whole premise here is that Barry's dad was accused of killing his mom, and Barry was always convinced of his dad's innocence. And he decides to go back in time and make like a little tiny change that basically keeps his dad in the house because he figures, well, his dad had gone to the store because his mom had forgotten a can of tomatoes for her sauce. So he came back and she'd been stabbed, but it was probably a home invader who uh, would have been dissuaded by the presence of, a man like his father. So he just goes back in time, uses his speed force to throw a can of tomatoes in the cart. New future.
Yeah.
And what I would say is, so let's get into the two berries, shall we?
Okay.
Because he shows back up in the future, and his parents think, "Son, you look so old. What happened to you?" Well, he's like 5 years older than the self where you showed up.
Okay.
That's how you differentiate them. They have different hairstyles, and the one Barry is just ungodly annoying. It's like if you ever thought, oh, maybe this Ezra Miller version of Barry Allen is an irritating little wimp because he grew up without his parents and had trauma. No, it's just in his DNA.
Yeah.
If anything, having some life beaten into him made him less annoying.
Yeah.
Um, so Barry now one of the more interesting things they did was they had I'm gonna call them Barry Prime and Barry Past just to try to keep it from being confusing.
Okay.
Barry Prime realizes that it's the night that he got his superpowers, and so he takes Barry Past to the lab where the lightning struck and he got his powers. In the course of things, they're both doused in the chemicals, and Barry Prime loses his tooth and they super glue it back in, which seems weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a setup for the best gag ever at the end.
Oh, jeez.
But lightning hits them both, douses them both in chemicals, but this causes Barry Prime to lose his powers. So you have Barry Past has to be the one to be the Flash in the interim.
Okay.
And he realizes that, oh crap, this is the day where Zod shows up from Man of Steel. That's right. This movie is so heavily invested in the DCEU that that Zod manages this version of Zod manages to be the villain for a third movie if you count Doomsday.
Oh, jeez.
And so Barry's like, okay, well, Superman, a lot of people died last time around. Hey, if we can get the Justice League together in advance, nobody has to die. And in the course of researching this, he finds out that, well, Batman retired years ago. There's the only Wonder Woman they find is this Vegas magician. They call Arthur Curry's lighthouse, and there's his dad, played by Django Fett himself.
Yeah.
Who never had, never met the Queen of Atlantis, never had a kid.
Okay.
And there is no Clark Kent.
Okay.
So he realizes that he's changed everything. It's not just like there's this concept in physics these days where it's like retro causality, where supposedly things in the future can affect the past. I tend to chalk up a lot of stuff like that, like the multiverse and quantum physics, in the it's confusing, so I don't care about it pile.
Yeah.
So, but I had heard that term before. That's how they basically justified the that time travel affecting things before it, like basically putting it on another timeline.
Ah,
So they go to Gotham, meet Michael Keaton, and they realize that a meteor had. Okay, so Holy Ninja asked the question I kind of just answered. How is saving Barry's mom affecting Wonder Woman and Aquaman? They did the same thing in the original Flashpoint. It's basically like it's less about a cause and effect relationship and more that changing a key node in history put the whole world on a different track.
yeah.
Like the future affecting the past in a weird way.
Ah, yeah.
So they go and like, okay, we need to get the big guns. Let's go find Batman. He's our strategist. They're very confused to find this old hippie in hiding in his kitchen, and he comes out and just proceeds to. He it's very satisfying watching him beat up Ezra. Um, they find out what's going on. They have a weird thing where now I'd heard people say, "Oh, they complained that Batman saved the day because of gun control." I was listening for that. I didn't hear the words "we got rid of guns." I just heard Gotham is now the safest place on the planet. Um,
Oh.
uh, where it's like, yeah, he basically Batman won. Good job.
Yeah.
And they then team up to go uh, save what they think is Superman. Turns out to be Supergirl instead. Uh, it seems that Zod already got baby Kal-El at some point, but he didn't have the Matrix in him or whatever the thing was in Superman
Oh,
or in Man
yeah.
of Steel. So he
Yeah, yeah.
now originally apparently he was killed on camera. I've heard of clips. I've heard of people talk about. I've heard people talk about cuts where that was done on camera. So I'm glad they just had it mentioned off camera.
Yeah.
So Kara is the one who has the thing that will rebuild the Kryptonians inside of her.
Okay.
Um, and they end up doing a thing where Barry risks his life to get struck by lightning and the right mix of chemicals again.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Supergirl helps out, and they go to save the day. Now, one thing I did not mention before is that it's partially because I went on a bathroom break when this actually happened, so I was told about this.
Okay.
Is that early on when Barry was traveling through time, there was some sort of monstrous thing that
Hmm.
like a demonic looking being who rushed him.
Hmm.
So uh, you cut to back to my chronological take here. You cut back to the present, and it's Zod's invasion day. Batman, Supergirl, and the two Flashes show up. Now, one of the only humorous bits in the movie that really worked uh, was past Barry made himself a costume by spray painting an old Batman costume, and cutting off the horns so it looked kind of like the head wings. And at one point, he looks to the side to look at Prime Barry, and of course, those old Batman masks couldn't actually turn.
Yeah.
Uh, his head moves around in there. But that was a good bit.
Yeah.
So they proceed to go out there to fight the Kryptonians. And it turns out that two Flashes, a Batman, and a Supergirl who only just got her powers yesterday were not able to beat a group of Kryptonians who had much more time to acclimate to Earth and getting their superpowers.
Ah.
So they lose.
Mhm.
But so the two Barrys go back in time. It's like, okay, we can try it again. Okay, they do it again. They do it again. They do it again, and they do it again.
Ah.
And past Barry keeps getting stuff stuck inside of him. Like he gets a blade stuck in his arm at one point, but since he has like they have the Flash have healing powers in this, so
Yeah.
he survives. And so you find out that monster that tried to attack them early on was actually a version of past Barry who had been trying over and over and over and over and over again. And that's where Chang is pointing out that they dropped the whole calorie thing. I guess he occasionally assumed that okay, I'm going to go and eat an entire Golden Corral's worth of food and then back to the attempt.
Yeah.
because he's like an old man covered in Kryptonian debris from all of his different attempts that have mutated him and scarred him horribly.
Uh, oof.
So that's the Reverse Flash, basically.
Mm.
Though they never call him that.
Uh,
And so Prime Barry concludes that we have to let if this is the linchpin of everything, we have to let Mom die.
yeah.
So and by the way, I will say that Michael Keaton Batman went out. He went out pretty well, I would say, considering he was having to fight the big bulky Kryptonian bruiser um, without really knowing what he could do.
Uh,
It's like he still died, but it was a reasonably satisfying send off.
okay.
So then, so Barry goes back, has an actually touching moment with his mom as he says goodbye to her in sort of a cryptic way.
Hmm.
She just thinks that he's some sad man who showed up at the grocery store,
Uh,
and he goes back in time. The world is reset, but he made one little change. So early on in the movie, Bruce, played by Ben Affleck,
mhm,
had run some security footage of his dad through an AI upscaler thing,
mhm.
and it turned out that you couldn't actually see who it was
Uh,
because he was looking down.
okay.
So Barry made one little change, which was he moved the tomatoes to a higher shelf to force his dad to look up when he reached for them.
Uh,
This is considered exonerating evidence because it proves his alibi that he's maintained all these years.
okay.
Though now the thing is, of course, that type of AI image upscaling would not be admissible in court because the whole idea was that I think it's because of Barry's electrical fuckery from being around had distorted the camera originally.
Uh,
Like, actually, this is where a time travel story gets confusing if you don't actually establish your rules. Was there always a version of Barry running around whose ambient electricity caused the camera to flicker at that inopportune moment? Who
uh,
knows? They don't even say who actually killed his mom
uh,
when you get down to it. Like, you feel like there might be a cut thing there. But, his dad is free, everything is good, and Batman calls up and he says, "Yo, hey, congratulations. I'll be there in a minute." And out of the car steps George Clooney
oh, jeez.
because they've changed history. And
Ugh.
and Barry's like, "Wait, what?" At that exact moment, the tooth that he had knocked out during the power up scene early on chooses that exact moment for the super glue to disengage and to fall out.
Oh, jeez.
And that's where the movie proper ends.
Oh, jeez.
There's then a completely useless scene with Barry and Aquaman where Aquaman is sloppy drunk and for reasons.
Oh,
And apparently, this originally culminated in like Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck, showing up and saying, "Barry, you changed everything. You're in the wrong universe. We need your help," or something along those lines. Just something to like
right.
justify his existence.
Right. Yeah.
But since that would be a promissory note for a movie they're not making anymore, it's gone.
Ugh.
So it's a movie that leads nowhere.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the strong points are the Barry character stuff, getting to see Michael Keaton again, and it was even kind of nice to see Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot again.
Hmm.
You've heard people complain about the lasso of truth jokes. Yeah, they were not fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Chang
Change
is
it.
0 out of 10. He didn't have his Batman credit card.
Yeah.
He made the mistake of leaving home without it.
yes.
Yeah. So having done a run through of the story, haha, Flash. Oh, I forgot something. So when they realized that they needed to let Mom die because I left out that the universe was falling apart. That's because, technically speaking, this could have been completely cut because it's a big enough consequence to have, well, we saved Mom, but then the Kryptonians destroyed the Earth.
Mm.
But they had to have their universe member berries. So
Yes.
they look out as they're time traveling, and they see all these universes, which are represented by big spheres, which are easy to animate,
Yeah.
smashing into each other. And you see little bits of different universes, like George Reeves Superman, Christopher Reeves Superman with the matching
Oh.
Supergirl,
Oh yeah, her.
a
Yeah.
version of Jay Garrick Flash, Adam West Batman,
What?
and they had like a brief moment of him,
Oh God.
and I think it was existing footage that they just had on the sphere.
Okay.
Um, and then the weirdest thing of all is they had a Nicolas Cage version of Superman with long flowing hair fighting a giant spider, a mishmash of the different versions of the Superman Lives story that they never made into a movie in the 90s.
Right. Yes.
And I think that that's actually a good place to get into some final thoughts.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that they included that of all things, it's like the perfect example of fanboy capture. Like they talk in government about regulatory capture, where you make an agency to control a particular sector, but the only
Mhm.
people who would be competent to run that agency would be people with experience in that sector who are of course biased in favor of said sector.
Yeah.
When I say fanboy capture, I mean who the hell besides people like me and you and possibly our current audience would know the story about Nicolas Cage Superman and the giant spider?
Probably not that many.
No. Like this movie heavily fails the would mom have a lot of questions if we had taken her to the movie with us test.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially with my mom. Yeah.
Yeah, like you just listening to it, this sounds kind of convoluted and you kind of just have to accept certain things to keep watching.
Yeah.
So uh, this isn't the last DCEU movie to show. If it's the chronologically the last one, you know what? The whole ride was weird and convoluted and full of executive meddling. So this is a fitting send off for it. We got to see everybody who wasn't Henry Cavill one more time.
Hmm.
We got to see oh by the way, the special effects, man. The initial Ben Affleck thing, he should have been paced so many times during that whole scene.
Oh.
Just completely implausible, man. But
Uh,
as a send off for this universe, and I always find that I hate the DCEU. I think I've been very clear about that from the start that I don't really care for it.
yes, yes, you have. Yeah.
Um, I'm always the most charitable to it when I think it's stepping out the door for the last time. Well, this is the last time, so I'm inclined to be charitable to it.
Yeah.
So I had a decent enough time. Again, it's because
Okay.
I went in with no expectations. I know it's going nowhere. It can't hurt me anymore
Yeah.
with its interpretation of these characters.
Yeah. All right.
So it kind of gives you a little bit of sadness because you think, what could have been if they'd had a different Flash, or if they'd, given Ben Affleck his own Batman movie. But honestly, Man of Steel came out in what, 2013, 2014?
Yeah, 2013. Yeah.
They had 10 years to make this turkey work. We're ready for a fresh start.
Yes. Yeah. And Ninja says not as ridiculous nor fun as Sailor Moon when it comes to time travel.
And Ezra Moon got to be his own mini moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I say Ezra Moon? Ezra Miller got to be his own mini moon.
Ah.
All right.
All right.
So that took a bit longer than anticipated, but
That's all right.
I think it gives some nice setup for the dismal
The-
state of the box office this week.
Oh yeah.
Because boy, the box office was so bad that I've seen articles questioning if theaters are going to die.
Yeah. Man.
Because the only movie that is actually doing unambiguously well right now is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Because in its third weekend, it very nearly matched Disney's Elementals in its opening weekend.
Wow.
And I looked ahead at the daily box office. It was beating Flash and Elemental multiple days.
Wow. Man.
Everything else here, Little Mermaid, has been out for a month. $250 million is usually nothing to sneeze at, but not when you make the darn thing for 200 and was it 200 million or 250? I
I think it
forget
was
what.
I think it was 250.
Yeah, 250.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty astonishing. Yeah, when you look at that list. I mean, even I would say like even Guardians of the Galaxy, which I mean that might break even. I think,
Yeah, like
or if it or already has broken even. I think.
it's debatable. It depends on, did they do accounting shenanigans with this 250 million that they put into it? Because we know that Thor probably inherited some of the money from Shang-Chi,
Yeah.
or some of the expenses from Shang-Chi, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
Um, then you've all, but yeah, like
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous world we live in where we have to debate if a movie that made 800 million at the box office broke even.
Yeah. And Changus
Yeah,
says he's bummed about Transformers'
right.
numbers.
This
Yeah.
isn't just a Disney problem.
Yeah.
Because it's been out for 3 weeks now and it has not crossed 300 million yet. It's a bargain at 195 million.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
Though Transformers has the side benefit that it's an advertisement for toys, so
Hmm.
you know that Hasbro's going to make up a big chunk of whatever shortfall we get here by selling more action figures.
Yes. Yeah, and those action figures are not cheap, by the way.
No, I know multiple people who prefer to get knockoffs where the Chinese factory steals the old molds and actually often does a better job than Hasbro does.
Yeah.
Um, Now, as far as other new releases, Asteroid City in 6 theaters made a little under 900 million, or to me 900,000,
1,000. Oof.
but again, that's 140,000 a theater. Like that, that's probably
What?
like your Chinese theater in Los Angeles and a few other
Yeah.
places.
Yeah, New York. Yeah.
Right. So that isn't, it'll be interesting to see how that does as it rolls out.
Yeah.
But this summer is just nonsense. And you know
Yeah.
what? Let's go ahead and take a quick look back. I'm going to pull out the calculator, which I now realize does not show up on anybody else's end. So
All right.
I can 80085. Okay. So let's do a quick. I'm going to just add together the top five here for what they made over the weekend. So
Okay.
55, 29, 27, 20, 11. All right, so that's a grand total of 142 million from the top five. Probably
Wow.
143 because I rounded down. But
Yeah.
so let's go back in the Wayback Machine here. Weekly chart index. Show me this week in June of 2022 when Top Gun Maverick ruled the roost.
Yes.
617. Okay. Oh,
Oh,
this is the
wow.
weekend when Lightyear came out last year.
Oh, wow.
So you had 142 million for this year's box combined top five.
Okay.
So Jurassic World second weekend, 59. Lightyear made 50 million, which Elemental would love to have.
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick in week 4 is powering on at 44, and we've already outdone the top five from this year with the first three.
Wow.
Okay, but
Wow.
if we keep going, Doctor Strange on the tail end of it,
Bob's
Bob
Burgers.
Burgers the movie, which is a huge bomb. Yeah,
Yeah.
158 million.
Wow.
Like if you took out Doctor Strange and Bob's Burgers, top five last year beat the top five this year. And
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous situation because there were way more new releases last year or this year than last year.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because we were still kind of coming out of coming out from the unspecified virus of unknown origin.
Yeah, like when you just look at the top 10 here, Sonic was still in the top. Sonic 2 was still in the top 10 in week 11 because there was nothing else really.
Right. Yeah, I remember that last year. Yeah, there was just very few releases coming out. We had very little to talk about last
Yeah,
summer.
yeah. It's like you have Top Gun Maverick. You're eating up all the or soaking up all the oxygen in the room because that's all there was.
Yeah, and that could very well happen again this year. Tom Cruise might have to bail out the movie theaters again.
Yeah, when I keep thinking that there's no major movies coming out, I keep forgetting about Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
Uh, Now, as far as the home video charts, we actually have a couple of interesting notes here. Uh, John Wick still on top. Super Mario movies comes in at number 2. Um,
Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
yeah, now right here, this is why you see so many sequels, because on top of the actual money you make in the theaters, uh, you have people go, oh, well, I should probably watch that first Spider-Man movie before I see the next one.
Yeah, mm,
So they buy it on home video.
and that's just more money.
Yep. Dungeons and Dragons is in there. I think those were oh, are you there, God? It's me. Margaret debuts at number 8.
Ooh,
Apparently, the answer for Margaret was no.
no, yeah,
Shazam collapsing. That was basically what I wanted to show. Was just
yeah,
not only is Sony playing Top Gun Maverick this summer so far with Spider-Man, they're
yeah.
also taking unfair advantage and making a lot of money from the home video market.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had
On to
these
yeah.
things here. People who aren't YouTube incels like us,
Eh,
awful all night Yahtzees, as they might call us,
yeah,
for
yeah.
daring to have some of the opinions about entertainment we do.
Mhm.
Um, People who aren't us are starting to notice, hey, every Disney movie is bombing,
Yeah.
and superhero movies don't seem to be doing quite as well as they used to.
Almost like yeah, it sounds like we've been saying that for the last 2 years now.
Yeah, like, huh? I seriously think that the unknown virus of unknown origin
Mhm.
uh, really saved them from a reckoning that they would have run into sooner.
Yeah.
Because Flash probably would have come out in 2021
Mhm.
when you think about it. Uh, Elemental probably would have come out around the same time,
Yeah, probably, yeah.
just because animation is easier to remote.
Mhm.
But dang, it's just like I saw articles going, "Our movie theater's over."
Yeah.
It's like, now I have an opinion there. Daniel, do you think that this is the end of cinema as we know it?
No.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah.
Because there have been downtimes in Hollywood before.
Mhm.
This is simply a matter of we need actual good content to make people get out of their houses and go to the theaters.
Yes. Yeah, last week when we were talking about the French Connection, and that movie came out in the time of the auteur filmmaker when studios were basically just telling directors, just make any movie, do whatever you want, just don't spend a whole lot of money.
Yep. Do what
And
you want. We don't know what the audience wants anymore.
yeah, and I think that's basically that needs to happen again if cinema,
Right.
if cinemas want to stay around.
Like, clearly, the throw $200 million at anything and it'll sort itself out approach is not working.
Yeah.
It often didn't even work before,
No,
but like there
no,
were a lot of bombs in those days, but there were enough hits to make up for it.
right, yeah. And well, the other thing too is, and a lot of people have pointed this out, like these days you've got the small indie movies that are like really low budget,
Mhm.
and then you got movies like The Flash and others that are 200, $300 million, but you don't have, there's this divide here, but you don't have those like mid budget movies anymore, those 60, 80, even $100 million movies.
Yeah, it's weird how there's like been the erosion of the middle class, and it's
Yeah.
weirdly played out in entertainment too.
Yeah, a lot of people have, a lot of people have pointed that out, and I think some people have said that a lot of them are going to streaming. You see,
Right,
like a lot of them just are on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, or they or even being made into shows.
right. Like, I mean, so I mean, think about, say, think about the Snyderverse. Just to pull in a previous example,
Hmm.
um, I would say that even if Snyder had gotten to make the original Justice League start to finish,
Hmm.
trying to cut that down into a 3 hour movie would have been troublesome at best after watching the Snyder cut, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Wouldn't it have been better off if HBO had given him a truckload of money and said, "You're making a Justice League series for HBO"? Like
yeah,
just from the jump,
yeah,
you could have had Man of Steel as a season, Batman v Superman as a season, Justice League as a season.
yeah,
There would have been time to breathe. He could have been as self-indulgent as he liked,
yeah, yeah,
and that would have been more acceptable because that's better long-form storytelling. I seem to recall hearing that there was like at one point a 4 hour cut of the Flash.
wow,
Which, like, okay, seriously, somebody at Warner Brothers needs to. What kept happening was they would look at the script, say, "Oh yeah, script that will take 4 or 5 hours to film. Okay, sure." Get panicked when they realized how many shows a day they'd be able to get in with a 4 hour movie, then insisted they cut it down.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
can't go so chop heavy at the last minute.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Chang 4 hours. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, in that movie, Reverse Flash showed up at the very beginning, and there was like a freak out nightmare scene in the middle, and then he showed up again at the end. When really he should have been like a constant presence when you think about it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, just like with the Flashpoint, you know,
Hmm.
and yeah, because I mean, he is the Flash's arch nemesis. He's his Lex Luthor. He's his Joker. Yeah. Oh, you got muted. You got muted.
You didn't get to have the live action version of because he barely had any scenes.
Oh,
Remember the first time you got with a girl, Barry, and you that was me, Barry.
that was me, Barry.
Remember that time that when you opened that soda while you were on the date and you sprayed both of you with Dr. Pepper? It was me, Barry. I used the
Yes.
speed force to shake that can.
Ah, oh, great meme.
But yeah, I think that what we're seeing at this point is like, okay, if superhero fatigue was arguable before, I think we're seeing signs that it's fact.
Yeah,
Because Guardians of the Galaxy 3, from everything I've heard, is a good movie, a
yeah.
fine movie, a worthy movie. It is a
Mhm.
good send off for the characters. Some people have some critiques with it, but it sounds like it sounds like it was actually a good movie, and I need to watch it.
Yeah. Yes, I
But
do too. Yeah.
but it could not outdo the objectively crap Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that only did as well as it did because it got that spider bump we've talked about many times.
Yes. And it had all the rumors circulating around it, like, oh, Tom Cruise playing Tony Stark might show up, and
And arguably, it might have even had a WandaVision bump from anybody who was in the know and had just seen WandaVision that knew that Wanda was a big part of it.
yeah,
I think that WandaVision is like the one. Loki was bigger, but I feel like people had the most interest in WandaVision initially, partially because it was the first MCU show.
yeah, and it seemed like just a kind of it quirky enough that it got people's attention.
And then it went formulaic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this I don't see this being the end of cinemas. Like I just that
No.
seems hyperbolic.
Yeah.
Anytime you say that something is the definitive end of anything, it'll find a way to soldier on because
Mhm.
okay, so I'm gonna do a quick example here. Um, Daniel, did you know that in our lifetime, oil ran out in the year 1993?
I did not know that. No.
Because it didn't happen. But
Yeah.
the, like there have been predictions about peak oil going on for literally a century.
Mm.
Like, oh, and it's because the people are always working on the assumption, oh, well, we found all the oil. We
Okay.
know with known oil, and you know what? At any given time, they were generally right. If we had only found the oil we knew about in 1970, we would have probably run out of oil in the 90s.
Mhm.
But guess what? If there's demand, people keep exploring for it. As
Mhm.
long as it's profitable, people keep finding more and more of the stuff.
Yep.
By the same token, um, if they keep making Disney live action remakes for $250 million and mediocre Pixar movies, or copy of a copy of a copy Pixar movies,
Yeah.
that will kill the theaters and Disney given long enough. But
Yeah.
you have to assume that at some point, some smart person is going to realize that this isn't working.
Yeah.
If nothing else, uh, Peltz is going to say, "Hey, you quieted me down with the promise of a dividend, and I stopped trying to get onto the board. Screw you guys, I want on the board."
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Because event like Disney in particular, and Warner Brothers too, has too much going for them to
Mhm.
not be successful with the right people in charge.
Yeah.
You can't keep a good you can't keep a good company down unless you just aggressively keep pursuing non-working strategies. So let's hope that people go out there and discover that entertainment oil.
Yes, indeed. Changus says, Remember, Barry, when you shit your pants on your first date?"
uh,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. Before I went into my long talk about the plot of the Flash, we were going to kind of look at the elementals. I, I don't. Elemental just doesn't even seem like it's worth talking about. It sounds like it's fine.
Yeah. It's from what I've heard, it's like a water character and a fire character romance.
Yep.
Mm.
Some people have tried to call it woke. It's just about immigrants. They try to like, oh, it's a non-binary main character. The actor is non-binary. Whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
No. Yeah. Although I will say, with it bombing, it could be that could be the end, the beginning of the end for Pixar.
That's true. They haven't actually brought in any money for a while, so it could be the beginning of where either Pixar gets folded into Disney Animation or vice versa.
Yeah, which would be sad because I grew up on Pixar movies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Disney Animated for that matter.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
the other thing that's kind of interesting is, you gotta hand it to Sony for they came out of the slump they were in for a long time and have just been consistently coming out with fan pleasing stuff. You have misfires like 65, but they're fewer and far between.
yeah,
And Morbius, I
and
guess. But
yeah, Morbius. Yeah.
yeah, they are. Oh, you know what? Unofficial extra story here. One sec.
All right.
Um, Speaking of people figuring out smarter things to do, da, 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 da. You gotta love it when they lie in the title, in the headline.
Oh yeah.
Sony removes Bad Bunny Spider-Man spinoff El Muerto from the calendar. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. like yesterday when I posted that, they said highly anticipated in the headline.
Oh, so they changed the headline.
They changed the headline.
Oh,
They they figured it out.
yeah. It was not highly anticipated.
No. And I think it's them figuring out. Oh, it is boy. It sure is funny that this was announced at the same time as the Flash bombed.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they're saying it's because of the. Yeah, at this point, they need some more. Well, they need like a couple writing polishes on it, and the writers are on strike. So it would have been basically impossible to finish it before January. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think the odds are that this quietly slips off the release calendar, never happens?
I would say very good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to say 25% that this thing is just gone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
But you love to see it
Yeah.
because again, it's uh, we've talked about this before, where pop culture and nerd interests would probably be better off if they were shoved back into the cultural locker.
Yeah.
Because extra attention only brings normies, and they have to water things down for normies.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like I brought the example earlier where, who the hell is going to know or understand the reference of having a Nicolas Cage Superman fight a giant spider?
Yeah.
Well, we do.
Yeah.
If that version of Flashpoint had been an animated movie that you'd put right into Max with special edition Blu-rays for the nerds who really wanted it, probably would have made more money.
No, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. Yeah.
For that matter, come on, you cowards! Nicolas Cage, Nicolas Cage would love to come in and voice Superman.
Oh yeah.
Didn't he name his kid Kal-El?
Yes.
Yeah. So have him come in, voice Superman, make an animated movie based on Superman Lives.
Yeah.
That'll get you some Max subscriptions.
God, I might even watch that. Yeah.
Uh, I'd be there with bells on because if it's a Nicolas Cage project, it's at least going to be entertaining, even if it isn't good.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And maybe that's the thing to do with all these unmade superhero movies is turn them into relatively inexpensive animated movies.
Yeah. It sounds like a good idea. I don't see why not.
Yep, you're going to need something because with all the content you're cutting.
Yeah.
But well, it's funny. Thursday is always a low energy ebb day for me. Then I get talking about this stuff and get excited. So
Yeah.
uh, I did my usual verbal diarrhea there.
That's all right. No problem. Yeah. Well, I always listen. I always like listening to you talk about this stuff. It gets me excited too.
Because like this is where they go out there and they explore for that cinematic oil. So let's hope they strike pay dirt.
Indeed. Thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate it as always. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notifications. And
Because
if
it would
you're,
make us feel special.
yeah,
To quote twice.
yeah, yeah. So we will see you all next week. Good night,
Yep.
everybody.
Later, guys.